Of course, day two of a brand new year, a year which was meant to be full of hope and optimism, looking forward, New Year's resolutions, and many people hoping for an end to conflict. That has been shattered on the second day of this brand new year. The Times front page: terrorist truck attacker kills 10 in New Orleans. This is the Daily Telegraph saying an IS cell is behind the New Orleans terror. The Guardian says 10 dead after truck flying IS flag drives into a crowd in New Orleans. So what do we know? Well, a terrorist with suspected links to IS drove a pickup truck into crowds of people celebrating the New Year on one of America's most famous party streets. He's been named. He's Shamsud Din Bahar Jabbar. He's 42. He's a US national. He served in the US military. He sped into revelers on Bourbon Street in the heart of the French Quarter in New Orleans in the early hours, killing 15 people and injuring at least 35. Subsequently, an IS flag has been found in the rented vehicle. This is according to the FBI. Not just a flag, but also improvised explosives. Now, the FBI have actually gone further, saying he did not act alone, and they have issued a plea for more information on his contacts over the last few days. What is transpiring is the pickup truck struck a crane midway down the street where it came to a halt before Jabbar, who was dressed, according to eyewitnesses, in full military gear, got out of the vehicle. He was then killed in a shootout with police after he fired a weapon, striking 2 officers. Now, eyewitnesses were saying that actually this man was trying to kill and maim as many people as he possibly could. That has been reiterated by Police Chief Anne Kirkpatrick, who said he was hell-bent on creating the carnage and the damage that he did. Meanwhile, police are also investigating a Tesla Cybertruck, which was parked outside the Trump Hotel, which also exploded. It was filled with fuel canisters and firework mortars. It exploded outside the Trump Hotel in Nevada in Las Vegas. There you can see that explosion taking place, the footage that we are just saying. Now, the link between these two, both of these vehicles were hired from a car hire app, and that is what the FBI are now concentrating on. The story, since we've been on air, has moved on. ABC News now reporting that multiple people have been shot near a music venue in Queens in New York, according to police. Other reports suggest that at least 10 people have been shot at the nightclub. And the Daily Mirror, for me, of all the front pages, the Daily Mirror, I think, has the pithiest and the most poignant headline this morning: America under attack. Joining me now, James Hill, political correspondent at The Spectator. Good morning, James. James, Happy New Year. It is not the beginning of a new year that anyone had hoped for. Here we have innocent people celebrating the new year, mowed down, people killed, injured in a barbaric attack in New Orleans. You've then got an explosion of the Tesla Cybertruck, which took place outside the Trump Hotel in Vegas, and now we have multiple people being shot in a nightclub.
Yes, and this is clearly part of a long-standing pattern, both in America and in Europe too, in which these kind of large vehicles are being used to terrorise people at a point of festivity when they're going out and socialising. We saw around Christmas the attack in the East German market as well. There's obviously a long-standing pattern of these things being used, and so I think a couple of questions are going to be about, you know, how to what extent are these going to be copycat killings, and second of all, what is the role of kind of Islam or Islamic-linked organisations or ISIS or Islamist terrorists in this, all of these? Because it was very interesting, I think, the fact that they found the ISIS flag with him, and of course the fact that he was a US veteran as well. So really interesting questions and very tragic events today, and as you say at the top of the programme, David, not the start we would want to 2025.
No, absolutely. And just in terms of this, we know that Jabbar was born in Texas. He served, as you say, in the US military. According to his family, he had begun his conversion to Islam. Huge questions being asked also from our reporter who was actually in Vegas. This was Dan Warren, who was actually in Vegas at the time. He said the security was very lax. Certainly at one end of the strip, the security was lax, that vehicles were allowed to come and go. They went up to the top of a multi-storey car park. They were amazed that they had such freedom at a very busy time when obviously public safety is paramount.
Yes, I mean, this is the continual trade-off in terms of vigilance. And I think what's so striking is that if you talk to people involved in the kind of security world, is that they're constantly bombarded with information now. And that's partly a response to increased terror levels over the past 20 years or so, but also the nature of social media threats. They have to make a real hard grasp at trying to distinguish between genuine threats and sort of just general information. So clearly they judged in this case the threat level to be insufficient to raise it. Clearly, though, it could have had very different consequences if the driver wasn't so deranged to only blow themselves or set themselves up on fire.
Now, President Biden has spoken about the attack in New Orleans overnight. Let's bring you the clip. This is what Biden said as he addressed the United States nation.
The FBI is leading the investigation to determine what happened, why it happened, and whether there was any continuing threat to public safety. Here's what we know so far. The FBI has reported to me the killer was an American citizen, born in Texas. He served in the United States Army on active duty for many years. He also served in the Army Reserve until a few years ago. The FBI also reported to me that mere hours before the attack, he posted videos on social media indicating that he was inspired by ISIS, expressing a desire to kill, The ISIS flag was found in his vehicle, which he rented to conduct this attack. Possible explosives were found in the vehicle as well, and more explosives were found nearby.
President Biden there. Of course, we have just, 18 days until President-elect Trump comes into power. Donald Trump has basically jumped on the bandwagon, James. He appears to blame foreign criminals. He said, this is Biden's parting gift to America, migrant terrorists.
Well, I mean, as you said there, from what Biden's comments were suggesting, he's been a member of the US Army, he's been a US citizen. I'm not necessarily sure how foreign criminals can necessarily relate to that. But in terms of kind of long-standing issues on migration on the right, I think that some of the recent attacks and the attacks on President Biden's life have certainly heightened fears and some paranoia around security issues. So I think all of these things are going to be really at the presence of Donald Trump's mind when he comes into office. And yeah, as you say, at the sort of moment we're waiting to see more information come out. But it does seem as though all these issues around safety, about anything involving terror, involving foreign criminals, is very much at the forefront of American conservative thinking right now.
Absolutely. Let's just pause there and focus on matters domestic if we can. We know that immigration is the #1 issue in terms of voters' priorities. We know it's the immigration, the economy, and then the health service. And the Labour government under enormous pressure now to do something about the sheer numbers of people coming to this country. This is in the Times this morning. Anyone suspected of being involved in people smuggling or other serious crime will face bans on travel, on internet and mobile phone use under a big expansion of court orders designed to crack down on the small boat crossings. Now, essentially, what the Home Office is saying is it takes so long to actually try and prosecute people. They're trying to fast-track this, but I just wonder whether actually cracking down and saying, oh, well, you can't travel, you can't have the internet and you can't have a mobile phone will have any bearing at all. You just get a new one.
Well, yes, and quite. And the other thing the Times piece points out is that much of these gangs are operating from France and Northern Europe outside the jurisdiction of the United Kingdom. So actually, will it even affect the people who are going to be targeted by this? I think it's one of those measures where I suppose it's difficult to sort of object in terms of principle. I don't think it would hurt the effort to sort of stop the boats, but is it going to help it much? I don't think it will particularly. And so the question is, of course, does Labour need a bigger bazooka, a bigger weapon to try and stop the boats? Because we've seen 1,700 arrive since Christmas Day alone. You've seen total numbers tick up to 25% up on 2023's numbers. So the question is, of course, whether Labour is going to be putting sufficient effort in terms of not doing the big stuff that needs to be done to resolve this issue.
Well, and that's the key here. How much of this is obfuscation? Because actually what people want is action. When you look at those numbers, as you rightly say, 36,818 migrants in 2024, the second highest year since records began in 2018. Keir Starmer says, oh, we're going to smash the gangs, we're going to have a border security command. What that means, we're bringing all the agencies together, we have our intel. We talked about this story the other day about satellite tracking of boats coming across to the United Kingdom, and yet nothing is ever done.
Well, it's because Labour much prefers to talk about criminal gangs. They like having this black and white issue of these are the nasty gangs, rather than talking about the people who are coming here and the incentives that are attracting them. And so I think the challenge for Labour in 2025 is going to be, look, as there's no sign of the boat stopping anytime soon, you keep talking about how you've got rid of Rwanda and redistributed the money. Why isn't it actually having any concrete effect on bringing the numbers down?
Can I just ask the political ramifications of this? Because it seems that Labour is very soft on immigration. The Conservative Party kept saying they were going to solve immigration. They didn't do that, and of course that has left a void. That is where parties like Reform UK are doing very well. They have been very clear about what they would do, i.e. turn the boats back, and they say that is perfectly possible under UK and international law.
That's going to be the continual debate that keeps running on here. And I think, David, what's interesting is how much it's going to bleed into other routes about housing, about public service spending, about how much money is going on hotel bills, and also it's just in terms of resources involved in tying up and preventing people from moving out of the UK in terms of asylum seekers. So I think that's the question for me in this year, is going to be how much it bleeds into debates around other services, particularly when Rachel Reeves has a really interesting and difficult spending review coming up in April, May.
There's a really interesting article as well. Labour rejecting Oldham's call, this is Oldham Council's call, for a government inquiry into the grooming gangs scandal, which was broken by another news outlet. Liz Truss has tweeted about this. She says, this is Jess Phillips, obviously, who has blocked this inquiry into the grooming gangs. And Liz Truss says this is Jess Phillips, the same Home Office minister who excused masked Islamist thugs. Her title, Parliamentary Under-Secretary of State for Safeguarding of Violence Against Women and Girls, is a perversion of the English language. What's your reading of this? Why is there going to be no inquiry? That is something that people are crying out for. What has been going on in Oldham? What is going on in other parts of the country? And dare we actually speak the truth about what is going on in the United Kingdom itself?
Yeah, so this was a decision that Jess Phillips made a number of months ago, which only just been picked up, which is that she rejected calls for an inquiry into what happened in Oldham. I think that in terms of the discussion around issues about grooming gangs, etc., it's one of clearly many people in Westminster would prefer not to talk about. They would point for
Why don't they want to talk about it?
Because it's contentious issues, thorny issues, and frankly, for a minority, there'll be also those that are concerned about their voter blocks. So I think that it's a really interesting question about where this next goes. For me, it shows the power of social media and reigniting issues. Some in Westminster will point to the fact that we have had several inquiries into things like the J inquiry into Rotherham. But the question is, of course, were those willing to find sufficient number of people who are guilty? And I think that the long-standing issue for inquiries in this country is that too often they go on for years, they spend too much money, and the people get to walk away scot-free. Not least, of course, with the fact that one of the people who've become into controversy in their role in some of these scandals in one of these scandals, was Sean Telford, who's an MP now, and he's now had to lock his Twitter account, etc. I believe that one of the candidates who was selected originally by Labour for this year's general election was actually someone who was involved in the Rotherham scandal on the council service level. And that shows for me the fact that there is a lack of political ramifications if you're seen as being involved in services that have failed on all this. So I think that it shows that we haven't learnt enough lessons, but it's clearly going to be a route that's not going away anytime soon.
But the impact of this is people around the country are thinking we are not being told the truth about what is going on in Britain.
And I think there are a lot of people who are pretty shocked when they discover and actually go and read some of the reports that have been done on this. And there is a sense, perhaps, I think, of also American audiences coming to this for the first time and being amazed at what's gone on in the UK. The point is, I think a lot of people have been willing to look away from what's happened because it makes for, frankly, deeply disturbing, uncomfortable and unhappy reading.
And, of course, Elon Musk now has waded into this as well on this row over the grooming gangs. Elon Musk also tweeting, saying that Jess Phillips should be in prison.
Yeah, I mean, this is basically another sign that Labour are going to have to keep dealing with. The world's richest man, one of the world's most powerful men, is very online, and he responded to the story that she'd rejected an inquiry by suggesting she be imprisoned. Quite something, given she's a Home Office minister.
Well, it is, and also what does it say about Labour's very tricky, precarious positioning with the United States itself? President-elect Trump in power in, 18 days' time, Elon Musk right there. Elon Musk actually renting a property on Mar-a-Lago, so right next door to Trump, joined at the hip. And Labour has a huge problem here because the rhetoric has been awful, such as David Lammy, as we know, calling Trump a a neo-Nazi hating or sympathising sociopath, and that's just the beginning of it. And then, of course, Mandelson hasn't been exactly kind about Donald Trump in the past.
Yeah, I mean, Labour have a huge problem with all of this, and they're going to have people like Elon Musk who are very much aware of these issues, sort of saying all sorts of stuff, and there'll be a temptation to respond to everything that the UK government does. It's going to be a really thorny issue. I think the longer-term question, of course, as well, is about how all these scandals, etc., play an impact on the UK's reputation in America. When I was at the Republican National Convention a few months ago, it was striking how you were more likely to hear talk about Rotherham, for instance, or grooming gangs than you were to talk about the special relationship. And for me, I think all these scandals do have real-world consequences, and the chickens, frankly, are coming home to roost.
James, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much.